the Renegade Butcher Show. Appreciate you all joining me here. It's been a minute since I've sat down and recorded some content and really done some stuff, or at least got it out here on the show. I've been doing little stuff here and there. It's kept me busy. I've been on the after party. We've been doing Lightning for Liberty, but I haven't done much on the butcher side of things, or just me getting here and talking and doing this. So sorry about that, guys. It's coming into deer season. I've been trying to get all my ducks in a row, and I do get swamped. So that's kind of where I've been. That's what I've been working on. But this last week, it's really started to kick off. It went from me kind of sitting around and being at that point where I'm like, I need to start making some money here. I know it's early in the season to now people are really starting to get out there in the field. They're picking up some hogs. The customers that actually own the place where I do the deer processing, we've got their little shop out there on their place. And they've got a couple hundred acres. They raise cattle. They feed cattle. There are hogs. They come out and they tear up the pasture. So they trap. And every year they get them in the trap. And if, friends and family say, hey, look, I want a hog this year, they just pick up the processing bill. They pay me. Everybody wins. They get these things gone. They don't just have to shoot them and get rid of them. People get good quality meat if it's done right. So I had 6 yesterday morning. That kept me really busy. But last week I had one dropped off. And I went ahead and got that done, got that processed out for him. And I took some video as I did that of some of the process of me breaking it down, taking it apart, demonstrating how it all comes together. Then the grind process, some sausage making, and I smoked it and fully finished it. So I had a bunch of short videos. I got them out on TikTok. If you're not on TikTok, you don't have to be on TikTok. You don't have to have an account. You can go to @Renegade Butcher over at TikTok, and you can watch my stuff that's public without an account. But I use it. It gets a good following over there. So I posted up a bunch of those videos. It got about 140 followers in like 24 hours. So that has turned out really good for me. Hopefully I can channel some of them back to the podcast. I need to put something out here for people to actually watch. And I may not have much opportunity the next few months as things really start to heat up. I'm hoping Brian from the Lots Project, check his stuff out at the Lots Project on all your podcast catchers and YouTube and everywhere else. I think it's thelotsproject.com, and or go to lots.ittybitty.tips, and you can find all of the stuff there. I've been pushing that as well, trying to work on the lightning side of things. We're going to have Lightning for Liberty coming up right after this episode. I don't want to ramble for too long because I have video to play for you guys. I took all those short videos, strung them together. Maybe I'll throw some commentary on here for you. And if anybody has any comments or whatnot, at least I'm here to answer. But I'm going to let that play here in a few minutes. Before I get back to that, hey, I've not done any kind of affiliate or sponsor type stuff in a while because, for one, I haven't done a show. And the last couple that I've done, I neglected that because I was all about everything else. I've been in catch-up mode for the last few months. So, once again, my fault. But here we are. You can always check stuff out at shop.libertymeat.solutions if you want to kind of support me in the show and what we have going on. Everything there links back to me in one way or the other. That is awesome. I need to update because I have been approved for more affiliates that I haven't linked in yet. That's my next big thing on my social media website kind of list type thing. Like I said, running around playing catch up on a million different things. So I just got done ordering seasonings for 7 different types of sausage that I'm making out of 6 different hogs. So I'm jumping through all kinds of hoops, and it's fun, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. So thanks for hanging out today. I'm kind of taking half the day as my podcast day. Like I said, this is the first of 3 big podcasts I'm going to be on today, and we're just going to kind of roll with that. Another thing I got an email about earlier, I have talked about it before in the past. If you are into crypto or anything like that, there's a company called Juno. They used to be on Juno, but they changed to Juno. I think it's a better marketing decision on their part. If you ask me, I like the name better. But anyway, they offer basically a bank account that you have a debit card with. It's like a prepaid debit card, kind of like you went and got something from like Chime or Oxygen or something like that. And they also allow you to keep balances in various cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, which is where I would typically put it. They give some big bonuses. For a while they're giving 6% like bonuses on USDC, which is great. It's almost like fiat. I did that for a bit when I had spending money, but you can spend the money. It's one of the few I know of that you can spend the money directly from that crypto balance. You can just go get gas with it. Right now, for the next 6 months, they're doing a thing where you can basically get 5% cash back on the balance you keep in the checking account. So if you got to do fiat type stuff, if you're not using Fold, you should check that out. And you can be part of my Fold Spin Club. I didn't link that over there, but you message me or find me in the groups. I will send you a link that you can join that, or check out Brian at the Lots Projects. He's got his listed up as well. And that's a great way to use fiat. If you want to hold fiat and you need like just a certain amount sitting around in an accessible place like a debit card, 5% is pretty damn good. So I put a link in the show notes for that. Check it out. Hopefully that helps you out in some way. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get this played so I'm not too late for Lightning for Liberty. Give me just one moment. I'm going to bring this on up. And if you guys have any questions, thoughts, or anything like that, feel free to throw them in the comments on YouTube or over on Telegram. I need to get that Telegram stream started up, actually, now that I think about that. I'm going to do that right now. Sorry about any audio listeners. Now, as far as the audio side, I do not know. Let's see here. We got a question already from Jackie over at the Telegram group. That is awesome. Let's see here. Start video chat. We're going to get that streaming, and hopefully it will pick that right up. And we might get a little echo here, folks. And if that's the case, we will take care of it. Let's see here. Sometimes you do run into that when we're getting it going. Okay, we're getting out. Jackie asks, how do you get rid of the gaminess or oiliness, or is wild pig different than boar? That is a huge question as far as it depends. Most of the time, the gaminess that people are experiencing, I find, comes down to poor handling or skinning. They weren't taken care of in an expedient enough manner. They weren't held at a proper temperature. That can cause rancidity in the meat, and a lot of times people attribute that to gaminess. The actual gaminess that you're experiencing may be a stress hormone in the animal. I don't think that's the case very often. I think it's usually poor handling, though there is such a thing as boar taint. Boars can get a rank, greasy, skanky smell to them, and it's part of a breeding hormone. Not all of them produce this, though, and those that don't do not pass it on down. It's carried down the male line. So that is an interesting little conundrum there. There's a test for it. You can even test a pig live. I don't prefer to do so, but they take a chunk of back fat, basically, with a large hypodermic needle, and they put it under a flame, and you'll smell if there is that rank odor to it. I usually test if I have a suspect wild hog come in. I'll take a small portion of fat and I put it under a torch and smell. And when that odor isn't present, it's a clean hog. And as long as you do your job right, it shouldn't be an issue. So there's a lot more out there that are in good shape than you'd think. What they're eating makes a big difference as well. If they're feeding on livestock feed and deer corn, they're probably in pretty good shape. If they are, kind of living on trash and old rotten acorns, they might taste kind of funky, just like any kind of animal, really. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video. And if anybody's got some comments, like I said, hit me up on Telegram, hit me up on YouTube. I'll try to answer them in comments in type if I can be. I'd love to break this out into like a 2-hour episode, but I am kind of crunched for time here. But the conversation can always continue over there on Telegram. I do have the link in the show notes for the Liberty Meat Chat. If you're not in there, you should check it out. It's a pretty dang good little group. So with that, let me get this going.
Wild piggy dropped off last night. A little bitty wild hog. Nothing too special. Probably maybe 60 pounds live, I'd guess. And we're going to get them cut up today. They weren't real super preferential on what they want. There's a little bit of cleanup, but this guy came in pretty good. Already came in skinned, so this is just how it got dropped off. It was on ice last night, and we're going to do a little bit of cleanup and break it on down. Of course, we got the basics here to do the job in this little old shop. We got us a good old sharp knife. We got us a meat hook, a couple different trays, got some good cutting boards. We got places to put all of our trim and everything that we're going to be working with here. This right here is a cut. It's important to keep your stuff together, especially when it's other people's stuff. So I've got personal information covered up here, but little wild hog that was dropped off last night, I need to fill out a few more things on there, but just gives me basic instructions on how I am planning to cut up that. Now, it is important to note that in places like Texas here, it is still hot this time of year, so a lot of guys do end up having to ice this wild game immediately. So they do the best they can, a lot of times having to skin out in the field. These guys did a pretty darn good job. It was actually brought to me from one that was trapped. And you will run into a little bit of dirt and stuff on the outside. This is a big part of why I like to get them out of ice right away and let them dry out in the cooler if possible, because it does keep things a little bit cleaner. You don't want to leave something soaking and marinating in ice water. You want to make sure that that water is drained away if you do have to use the ice, because what happens is if there is dirt on that carcass right there, now you're allowing that to soak into that water and permeate the meat, and you're basically marinating it in whatever dirt may be there, hair, who knows, could be feces. You'll see stuff like that come in on animals. So we're gonna let this dry out right here. It was in good shape. The ice was not melted when it was brought, and we're just going to go ahead and trim this. We're not going to wash this away because all we're doing is spreading it around. Then we're going to go ahead and trim off anything that needs to go away, and then we'll continue with the breakdown from there. Now, this is an important thing to note. I'm not sure if the video will show. There's a lot of times, most time on meat, you'll find this membrane on the outside. It's called the fascia. Zoom out here a little bit so we can get a better clear view. You can see most of the dirt that is stuck to this meat is going to be there on that if this meat was kept dry. So work my knife under it. Let me see if I can get, it's hard to do that on video with one hand, but you can see how I can work my knife underneath there and just take that fascia off in those areas when it's not been lost during the skinning process. All right, now we got the majority cleaned up that we can really see. We'll run into a few little more pieces of hair and stuff like that as we break it down, and we'll just trim those as we go. But I'd like to try to get everything cleaned up as well as possible the first time. One really important thing to consider if you get wild game processed by someone, like somebody else, is keeping that animal as clean as possible during the skinning process, the transportation process, everything else. Because the more things that I've got to clean off that carcass, the less yield you're going to get. The only real safe way to get it done is going to be to trim away anything that is contaminated. So if you bring me a really dirty animal, I may even reject it. I try not to do that. I understand it's hard to do out there in the field and whatnot. It's also why I offer skinning services. It's 25 bucks. So, and that includes if you just shot the thing, bring it to me and I'll gut it. I've got experience doing that, so I'm happy to offer that. I've got the facilities to keep it clean and do it that way. So just one option, but keep that in mind. The cleaner the meat, the more you're getting back. Was hoping to find my camera mount, but I'm not sure where it's at the moment, so I could show the breakdown on some of this. But one thing, I'll just kind of give you a walk through the process of how I'm going to break this thing down. They're going to want a few roasts out of this. We're going to save these loins off the back for some small cuts, basically pork chops, but I'm going to butterfly those and tenderize them. Get a small animal. Those tenderloins are going to come out of the inside right under here, and the majority of everything else, the rib meat, the neck meat, any trim that's going to come off that's clean, is all going to get turned into grind, and then that's going to become sausage. Since this is such a lean animal, any of that that sausage, we're probably going to add some fattier domestic pork with it. As you can see, there's no fat on this animal, hardly at all, so it'd be really hard to make sausage that way. We'll see what our weights are at the end and see if it falls in line with kind of what we quoted the customer, and if it's a little more than that, we'll call them back and some adjust, see what we want to do before everything gets ground and packaged and smoked, and hopefully sausage will be happening here over the weekend. As you can see with this shoulder, since I'm not breaking this thing down like a domestic pig, I don't want to use the bandsaw for it and everything. We're going to come in here underneath of it. There's nothing that holds these shoulders, just like on a deer. There's nothing that holds these shoulders. It's just tendons, so we're going to work that knife under, and we're going to peel that whole thing off, and I'm going to break those down, clean out the shanks and everything a little bit, and make a couple of nice small bone-in roasts for them that they can put on the smoker. We're going to come in with the hinds as well. We're going to work our way around through the pelvis, what they call the H-bone, A-I-T-C-H, not H like hip, even though that was how I thought it was at first when I first began doing this. We'll do the same. We're going to bone out those lower shanks and remove those and get them out of the way. We'll get those tenderloins pulled. We'll go ahead and pull the loins or the back straps on pork. We typically call it a pork loin. and we'll clean that all up and get it prepped as well. We'll debone the rest of the carcass and get everything ready to go. I may even save some bones out of this to make some stock later on. The customer didn't request it, but if I make boudin and things like that, I do like to have broth on for that. And there's both shoulders off. Definitely more to be done there. We'll get some more trimming and everything like that, but as you can see, they just kind of peel right off. Freshly off the bone. As you can see, this ham has come all the way off this hip bone right here. A little bit of more meat there we'll scrape off the knife. There's always going to be. Came off nice and clean. And yeah, we're going to sit it right here next to the other one. We'll get those cleaned up and made into some small ham roast for them. Okay, now we're going for tenderloins. I like to go ahead and, as you see, I've cut away these these belly flaps here from the spine, from the loin and the tenderloins here. You can see that's the edge of the loin, and that is the you know, the tenderloins right here. And there are some glands and things like that that we're going to go ahead and trim out. We're going to run our knife up all along that spine. There's a little pocket that this is in, and we're going to cut up through here, and then we're just going to go ahead and peel them out off of that bone. And we'll do some trimming and clean up on those. They make a nice little meal. This may not be the way that I would break down a domestic hog. If I wanted bone-in chops, those would be part of those little T-bone looking chops. That's that lower section, just like on beef. That tenderloin is the lower section of your T-bone. And you know, your belly and your rib meat out here, this is where your bacon would come from. As you can see, that's not going to happen on this little lean thing. You're rarely going to see that on a wild hog. So most of this is going to become trim, going to end up turning into sausage. But so we're breaking it down a little bit more like we would a deer, and that's okay. And there it is, the tenderloin, little tiny bitty pork tenderloin. You can see it just hangs up in that pocket there. Like I said, I just ran my knife down along the inside of that spine, and it opens up that pocket. You peel out, and you just kind of come in with a knife and help anything that might stick. I'm going to do exactly that same on the other side, and we'll clean those bad boys up too before we package them. All right, now don't mind my dirty floor. It's dirty because I've been walking on it. This isn't the floor. But this technique I like to use, I have a clean table right here. I like to rest on the edge. Now that I've cleaned up and I've pulled that rib meat off, it kind of sits here. So when I'm pulling these back straps out here, these loins, there's a ridge in this spine. So I'm going to be running my knife on either side of that ridge, all the way onto the bone, and then peeling it out, but working it with a knife. And it does take a little bit of skill and practice to not scar it up too much. It is a prized muscle on the animal, so we're going to try to keep it as intact as possible until we go and finish the processing. So just wanted to kind of show you how I do that with the beginning, the start of it, and I'll show you after I get one out. No. See right here. All right. What I did is I came in down along that spinal ridge, right along it with the flex of that blade, and then worked it free as we came. And I took pieces of the neck off with it as I went, part of the loin. And you see there's a little bit of bloodshot there from the slaughter portion. We're going to trim that out. We don't want to leave any bloodshot in the meat. But we're going to trim that out, clean that up back to that muscle here after a bit. You can actually continue the knife work in this scenario and clean half that neck off along with all of that rib meat on the outside all in one piece, and then break it on down. And I'll probably do that on the other side, but I wanted this to be a little more demonstrative here. Now there's all this little bitty silver skin and stuff like that we will trim out because we don't want that on a chop. A lot of people do get bent out of shape about having some of the silver skin or membrane in, say, the final grind. Anything that is a big piece like this, I'm going to pull out and clean up before I grind anything. But it's not going to lend a weird flavor to your meat, like that's kind of the common myth. The only time that will happen is if it's carrying a contamination or if the meat itself is already kind of spoiled. So as long as we have good hygiene practices, we shouldn't have any issue. Now, thicker pieces of membrane and tendon, we want to keep those out of that grind, because a lot of times what happens is that will stay in a small little piece that doesn't really render down. It's not fat, and it's going to give you chewy bits or hard pieces in your sausage, and you don't want that. So we clean up as much as we can, but we're not going to kill ourselves either doing it. It would be a complete waste of time, and you'd end up losing more meat in the process. So it's kind of one of those, you have to make that judgment call, and it takes a little bit of practice to get it right. All right, so for this side, I already did the knife work, and like I said, you can just peel that meat all off, kind of one big sheet. You've got your loin right here, and this would have been your bacon, had it actually been a bacon hog. This little bit right here. So as you can see, all that's really left on this side is coming in between the ribs and a few little pieces here and there that I can trim up. So we're going to set this aside. We'll trim it up too in a bit. and we're going to go ahead. I'm going to pick this carcass clean real quick because we don't waste no meat around here. And we'll be back. Vulture mode. Activate. Dun, dun, dun. Yep, try to go through and pick out as much as we can. You'll never get it all, but yeah, I tried to starve the buzzards. Okay, so right here I've got the loins. As you see, this one I've already cleaned up fully. Looking at both sides of this, got it all fully cleaned. That's actually the bottom side, so we're looking at mirrored here. This got all that bloodshot bruised muscle that was up in that neck meat. As you could see before in the previous video, this was a trapped hog, so I'm sure it was shot in the head. And I actually saw a wound channel that came down through here, so I won't be surprised if I find like a 22 round or something up in here. Pretty common on a trapped hog. It's a good way to put them down. But you can see we've still got all this little silver skin and stuff. I'm going to clean that off. Now, if I flip over here, normally if this was a domestic hog or a really like well-fed and clean wild pig and it had good fat cap on the back here, I would leave that fat cap and leave them on the pork chops because I do like some fat on my pork chop. This has almost no fat, so all we have is this fascia, this silver skin right here, and that's just kind of not the most pleasing thing to eat. Especially once it cooks down the pan without the fat there, it's really going to dry up and be kind of chewy. So I'm going to do just like this one, and I'm going to start from the bottom side, clean it up. Well, I'll pull that top side off, and you can see that muscle kind of moves back into here. We're going to peel that out, and then that top side kind of comes off. It's almost like filleting a fish. We're trying to lose as little meat as possible, keep it nice and clean, just like this one. And we got those tenderloins that are very set. We don't really want to go through with a knife to peel all this silver skin off. It's very tender and small, and we don't want to lose this meat. As you can see, it is not a large piece off an animal this size, but really we're just coming through and taking all this extra, and it just peels off by hand. You can see how it starts. I'm going to use two hands to finish it off and get it done right, but that'll be all that we do to those. All right, here we're working on shoulders. We've got a small roast. As you can see, I got this one done. I went ahead and pulled out. We've got the shank muscle right here. We went ahead and squared it off just a little bit here. That shoulder blade muscle actually goes down to almost cartilage. It's extremely thin. I literally just fit off there. Makes it a little easier to package. Yeah, clean that off. A little bit of trim that comes off there, off that shank. Still has some shank meat in here. That's good flavored meat. This just gives that nice blade bone. Pretty much everything you'd get on a pork butt. You don't have the lower rib meat, but close enough on a small animal like this is about the best you're really going to get. And we're going to do the same on this other shoulder. All right, and we've got the hams here, and this one I have got done for this cut. As you can see, I've deboned and I pulled off the shank. Going to get rid of that. It's not going to take too much to do this one as well. It's basically just going through, making sure everything's cleaned up. Now, a lot of animals like this, I would be going through and parting out the larger major muscle groups here, removing any connective tissue, silver skin like that, cleaning them up, maybe making some tenderized pork cutlets out of it, maybe tenderizing it, marinating it for pork fajitas. There's a lot of things that can be done. Jerky. Some people opt to just go all sausage, but we're going to give this guy a few roasts. So some nice lean roasts that can go in the crock pot or the pellet grill and get them going there. And here we are, broken down all the way, and I got these backstrap here tenderized, these pork loins, tenderized little cutlets like that. They're small, but they're great for breading and frying or multiple different things, marinating them, however you want to do it. I've got to weigh up this trim, see what we're working with there, probably debone a pork shoulder that I've got. But there it is. That's the breakdown. These will get packaged up here a little bit later, vacuum sealed and ready to go. And then sausage, we'll see how what happens. I'm going to talk to the customer, see what they want, see if they've decided. And it very well may happen tomorrow or Sunday. As far as the fully smoked part, we're probably going to do some smoked and some breakfast sausage, unless that changes. We are back the next day here, and kind of wrapped it up yesterday, let everything rest in the cooler. I'm going to get to making sausage from that trim. We added some extra pork, some fatty pork, to kind of boost this up a little bit, give it some fat. It's still a little leaner than I probably would lean for sausage, but it's going to make great sausage. You won't have too much grease in the pan. And I'll just, it's one of those we're a little more cautious at keeping that temperature low when we do the smoked sausage. If it's a lower fat percentage, we don't want to dry that stuff out. But we're going to take about half of this. We're going to make a breakfast, like pan sausage we call it in this area. We're smoked Polish sausage with the other half too. So hopefully I'll get some video of that. This is the first initial grind. We went ahead and got everything ground. We're going to blend it all really well by hand to make sure that that fat ratio is evenly distributed throughout the entire tub. And then we're going to divide it up. I've got a scale. We're going to do it by weight so we know exactly what we're dealing with. At that point, I'm going to add my dry seasonings and hand mix.
Then I'm going to go ahead and grind one more time, and that's going to really help distribute those spices. After that point, we do a wetting agent, and we hand mix again. Comes to a pan sausage, we're going to do ice cold water. Going to add just enough of it. It's way more than you think. A lot of times, folks will add a binder to sausage, and it's to kind of help everything stick together, make patties and all that. You do not need to add a binder to your sausage, especially pork sausage, if you are doing it properly. There's a process called protein extraction, where when you add enough water and enough mechanical mixing, we're doing it all by hand, but we'll be adding that mechanical mixing. It breaks down the proteins in the muscles, and it allows it to stick. You'll feel and you'll hear a change in the meat as it's mixed. It'll start to bind together and slap, almost like if you slap your wet leg in the shower kind of sound. And that's at the protein breaking down and binding together. So that's what we're going to go for. For the smoked sausage, it's optional depending on what customers want and everything like that. But typically with that smoked sausage, we're going to keep it traditional like a German or Polish sausage. And we're going to use a little bit of fresh beer as the wetting agent. And that adds a little bit of flavor as well. I think the carbonation also does help kind of distribute that seasoning in there. The pan sausage is going to get packaged here today in little chub tubes, and I'm probably going to have a little bit of extra that we're going to use for samples, and we may make some patties out of those. We'll see how that goes out. And then the Polish sausage, we're going to try to get it stuffed as well today and packaged up and hung, not packaged. I mean, we're going to get it stuffed and hung in the cooler to smoke tomorrow. It always is a little bit better if you can let it hang overnight, and that gives me a chance to get my smoker fully back online and everything. It'll be the first good smoke of the year. While I am thinking about it, I want to go ahead and touch on casings. Since I am going to make some smoked sausage here in a bit, I want to let these casings soak. I have had these for actually several months. They have been refrigerated. You don't want to freeze them, but these are salted. They'll last for a good long time, and these should be in great shape. I buy these in bulk. These are hog casings. Specifically, they're a little bit higher grade. They're middles. I get them specifically because they're fairly consistent. If you're looking to pay a little bit more and get a quality product, have less blowouts, that's a good way to go. This is what they call one hank. You'll see a little color there, there's a bit of ring in there or whatnot, where they have them all looped together on a little plastic ring, keep you from losing them. And this hank should do 100 to 120 pounds of cased sausage. So I am going to open this up. As you can see, it is very, I don't know if you can see very well in the video, it's very heavily salted. It's got a little brine in there. We're going to take it out. We're going to rinse as much salt off of it as we can with some cool water going into this fresh, clean bucket. And it's going to soak in that water. And I will leave this bucket in the cooler or the refrigerator under refrigeration for several weeks, and it should be fine. And it's about, at this point in the game, it's probably about how long it'll take me up to use this hank. But we'll get busy enough later on that I will probably be going through several of these every week at the very minimum. So we'll really be rocking and rolling through them. Right now, though, it's the first time I'm getting these open up for the season, so I wanted to do a little talk on that. One other thing, as I rinse this, it's going to be hard for me to rinse it while actually showing it, but you'll get the idea. To start getting a lot of that salt out, I actually like to take and cut a small slit in the corner of these vacuum seal bags. Just the bottom corners. Don't cut the casings itself. Just going to squeeze that back. And you can cut that top open. I'm going to take that over to the sink, and I'm going to run cold water into there for a while. And just let that come out of those corners of the bags. And let a lot of that salt rinse out before I take this out, because they're actually pretty long. Every one of these casings here is probably like 10 foot long, 20 foot long, just depending. And so it's kind of like handling wet spaghetti. But what I'll do, I'll make sure I've got the sink cleaned out, or I've got 2 buckets to work with, or a tub and a bucket, or something like that. And I dump the one side of it, or I dump it into one side, and I'll be rinsing it off with the sprayer as I sort of feed it over and kind of all off the best that I can. Get as much salt out of there as possible, just so those casings aren't overly salty when we use them. The salt's to preserve them while they're being kept for months and months and months. And they do keep a very long time because they're cleaned out really well and brined. We're back here with it rinsed. Like I said, this is that ring, and you can see they've got it knotted. There's really only like, I'm not even sure, probably like maybe 10 strands here of casings. And they're just tied there at one end. And the way that I reeled it out, I'm sure, I mean, I can't even show you how long it is. That is the full length of it down in there. So you've got hundreds of feet of casings in this hank, and it's really easy to get them all filled up. So this is just knotted on here loosely. I actually like to leave this ring in here as I work,
A lot of guys will just take it out right away. I'm going to add some water for these to soak in, but I'll leave these tight until I get to using them, and I will try to actually leave them looped through because it does help a lot to keep this sort of straight. If you've ever messed with these, it's really easy to get them in knots, and then you just kind of end up having to cut them because the nature of them, since they're natural casings, they will kind of lock shut once they're tied. That you can end up wasting a lot of casings that way. The other thing is, like I said, since I'm soaking these, I want to give them hours till I'm getting around to stuffing. When I'm going hot and heavy, if I get to a point where I need to just kind of stop and open up a new pack of casings because I forgot to pre-soak it, man, you're about to see me blow up a lot of casings. The purpose of the salt is to keep them somewhat dehydrated so that they last, and of course keep bacteria from growing. But once we rinse all that off, we need to rehydrate them so they have more flexibility. They're flexible now, but yeah, they're going to be a lot stiffer and a lot easier to tear if we don't pre-soak them. So definitely pre-soak your things, rinse all that salt off, and we're going to get back to it. Okay, another quick thing on making sausage. Like, this is the simplest sausage I could probably make, this breakfast sausage. I'm using Rio Spice right here, their blend. I'm going to add and adjust a little bit to it, but they have a really solid blend. They're based out of Huntsville, Texas. You can get their stuff online too. I recommend it. Hopefully we'll be working into doing some stuff with my own recipe soon, but these guys are a great base for me to work off of. As you can see, it says use 1 pound to 50 pounds of meat. I've got 10 pounds prepped here that we're making. So this is a small batch. Now I will say, start weighing your stuff. Start weighing your seasoning. If you have recipes that use cups or pounds or ounces or whatever, that is great. Convert them to weights. Whether it's grams, whether it's ounces, whatever works for you. Make sure that your container here, something that's a clean container that you can work with, that's dry so the seasoning doesn't stick to it. Make sure it's tared on your scale. Get yourself a kitchen scale that can weigh at least a tenth of an ounce. This is going to be 3.2 ounces. That's the math. Down here you see it's 16 ounces in the pound, so we're going to go 16 divided by 50. We're going to make that times 10, and that's how we're going to come up with it. Okay, we've got our seasoning in here. I've added some granulated garlic. I'm going to add a little bit more. This is the basic. If I was going to just start completely mild with a little bit of extra garlic, that's probably where I'd leave it. I usually just get the mild old-fashioned number 3 version of pan sausage seasoning that I typically use. I'll adjust spices from there. If I want to make spicy, rather than buying their spicy blend, I typically just add some red pepper, jalapenos, or black pepper. I ask the customers what they like, and I go from there. But we're going to mix this all up really good. I'm going to add a few more things to it. I'm not going to show you all my recipes, but we're going to mix this all up really, really good. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to dust it evenly all the way across this meat. We're going to hand mix that really well, and then we're going to run that back through the grinder a second time, dry, just as it is. No added water or anything like that. And then once that's all accomplished, I'll show you that consistency. Then we'll add our water and I'll do the mixing, and you'll hopefully be able to see the consistency different in the video, and we'll go from there. Okay, I want to do a little video. I want to do a little video on the grind part, but I don't know if it'll get drowned out with the noise because it is not a quiet little machine. But as you can see, I've got everything that's been hand mixed really well with the seasoning up here in the upper hopper. It's really important to not overfeed this when you're doing a regrind. You can pretty much feed, at least on this model, meat through it as fast as you want, as long as it's big chunks and strips. But when you have this regrind, it's sticky, so you can clog this feed through it. I don't know if you can see very well going down here, but anyway, it goes down to that screw in the grinder, and usually force too much into it to where that it's not really getting any traction. It's not pulling that meat in. You want to leave air. You want to leave space for it to tumble around a little bit. So I like to say about the size of maybe a piece of meatball. Something no bigger than the size of that feed throat. Little pieces of it slowly. Just pace yourself with the grinder. As you see down here, this is that regrind as it's coming out, and it's a lot more consistent as far as the fat distribution. And this is what it's all going to look like before I actually do that wetting agent, that mix. All right, here we are once again. Like I said, just letting her feed a little bit. I don't know if this audio will come through or not, but here we are. And there we are. It's just feeding right on through there. Just takes a little patience on that second grind. It's going to take you about twice as long on a regrind of ground meat already. But patience is the key. You'll waste a lot more time stopping and emptying out that this grinder head if you bind it up and have to start using one of the stompers that comes with it.
It's not a situation that's fun for anybody.
Okay, now fully ground, not mixed at all. This is about the consistency that we're looking at. This is about the looseness. It's got some stick to it, but it's not going to make the perfect patty without some compression or binder. So now we're going to go ahead and add the water, and we're going to mix that really well. You may have to add more. I'd say start with a little bit and mix, and add a little bit more till you get the consistency you're looking for. You don't need a ton of water, but it'll probably be more than you're thinking. Okay, I'd say we probably did about a quarter cup of cold water, and then we mix really good. You know, clean hands, really get in there. Probably a good 2-3 minutes. You'll see this consistency is different. We actually added about another quarter cup of water and then mixed again. Probably a good 5 minutes of mixing. Like I said, clean hands, and they're really good mechanically working the meat, turning it, getting it through your fingers. If you've got a mixer, great. To me, it's one more thing to clean, and it's just the more often I'm cleaning my hands, the better off I am anyway. Anyways, you can see how it's all kind of one cohesive piece here now. It's not super tacky. Some people like to blend it and add water until it is so tacky you can just stick it to the wall. But that's not really my preference. It reminds me of cheap overground sausage. But you can see it holds together pretty well here. If I make a ball of it, it's pretty cohesive. It's still loose enough to be able to use for other things. But if you're making a lot of patties, tacky's not bad. As you can see, it's going to make pretty good. That's going to stick together. You pretty much want to add liquid until that meat starts to feel loose, and then bind until it's absorbed all of that. And if it needs to be more, if you don't feel like it's sticking together well enough, add some more liquid until it feels loose again, and bind and work it until it's all cohesive, and then just adjust it from there. This is about how I like it. There's no particularly right or wrong way, but if your sausage is falling apart without a binder, this is a way to do it without adding flour or milk powder or something like that. Okay, and we're going to do exactly the same thing here with this Polish sausage mix. Same thing, same ratios, same process to get everything together, except you can see this little bit of extra, it's hard to tell in the video, a little extra salt it looks like on top. That's actually curing salt. We are putting that in specifically by weight. It is a very small amount, but and it's optional. Some people decide to go without it. I highly recommend it because it prevents botulism, and I don't want to be the guy that gave somebody that. So there we are. We're going to mix that well. We're going to mix everything back in while the grinder's still out and about. We're going to get it done, get this back in the cooler with that pan sausage, get this grinder clean back out, and we'll set back up with the stuffer to do packaging and make sausage links out of this once it's done. All right, here we are. We're adding the wetting agent for the Polish sausage, and as you can see, I've got Lone Star beer here. It's cheap, it's around, it's a pretty decent beer. Use whatever you like, but personally, I like something like this. I don't want to do something that's super hoppy in a smoked sausage, unless that's what you like. It's totally personal preference. I stick with a more mild type. Typically, most of the time I do, this is a 16-ounce can, most of the time I do a 12 ounce can for about 20 to 30 pounds of sausage. It's traditional. It does work really well. I think the carbonation helps. And, but if you want to say gluten-free, you just don't want beer, you don't want something else, you could do anything else. You could do a slight wine, you can do just some regular ice water. There's no reason to do beer in particular if you don't like it, but you don't really taste the beer in this. It's just kind of a part of that traditional German-style sausage, and it does blend really well. It adds a little something extra to it, a little extra zip that you don't necessarily taste, but you'll notice if it's not there, if you're used to having it with it in it. But like I said, use what you like. For this, I'm going to use about a third of the can. Just spread it around in there, and then we're going to mix it in really good. And then we've got spoils of war. Now, another thing as I'm going through and I'm mixing this all really well, I don't need to mix it as much as I do with the pan sausage. It's going to be stuffed in a casing. It's going to have plenty of compression there. It's going to hang overnight. It's not going to have an issue binding. It won't really hurt it to, but you will end up with a finer texture. If that's something you're looking for, I like a coarser grind, a double coarse grind on the sausage like this, so I have a little bit more of a meat feel to it, a little bit more bite to the meat. If you prefer a more emulsified texture, closer to something like commercial sausage or hot dog or whatnot, grinding it on a fine plate, maybe even twice grinding on a fine plate is what you're going to be looking for. I just like to be able to see the meat itself, and you don't want it to crumble apart. You're not going to have that issue with this, but just you don't have to get it to where it's tacky. You're not making patties with it, so just one other tip there. All right, and here I've got my sausage stuffer, my Hacker Brothers sausage stuffer. This is a 30-pound model. As you can see, it's a little worn. I go through about one of these a year. And this one, I am starting to wear this tank out here. We've actually had to do a little bit of welding on it. I've got a guy around that's a real good welder, and thankfully it's being stainless steel, it's tricky to work with. So it's on its last leg. There's a tremendous amount of pressure that gets put on these things. This is the biggest hand crank stuffer that I could find without buying thousands of dollars worth of commercial equipment. So we do use that. Let me turn the video here a little bit. As we come in here and have a look, see this tank, it will. We've got, you can change out the size of the horn right here. This is what we're going to use to package that pan sausage first. You've got this handle right here, will attach. Basically, it moves the piston up and down. So you've got a slow mode with more torque right here for downward. When you're raising the thing back up, changing out, reloading, if I can get it on there right, there you go. Raise that thing all the way up. And like I said, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure, so that usually is what ends up blowing out some of the clips on the tank. I told you I've been through a few of these, but like I said, I've probably done multiple tons, at least, even if you count hamburger stuffing, lots through this. So old PVC pipe coupler, I like to slide it under there, give some support. I also will support this back end, so it's not all the pressure on the clips. I will support it coming in through here with the tarp strap. So I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. I'm going to get it loaded up. Now you don't have to have, flip back over, you don't have to have one of these to package up, say loose burger or whatnot. You can do it out of a grinder. It is miserable. You never get the pressure. If you've tried it, you'll understand what I mean. A lot of folks just vacuum seal it. That can be problematic too. If you're not doing a ton, you probably don't need a full-on stuffer. But if you want to make sausage and you plan to make that something you do routinely, at least get a smaller one. But don't go buy the cheapest little 5-pound stuffer you can. Usually they're just complete junk. I would get one that does at least 10 pounds at a time. That way you're not constantly reloading it, and generally they're built a little bit better. If you're looking for something for home use, let me know, and I can probably give you some recommendations. And yeah, let me get this thing loaded up and try to show you how it was, or at least the results. Okay, again, here we've got that tank loaded. You'll notice I've got everything pressed down as much as I can inside the tank. Sorry, see those marks where we had to do that welding? That can be tricky to keep clean. I'm probably gonna have to end up ordering another one of these before we get too far into deer season. I'm sure I'll end up breaking this tank too. And they do run about $450. So, but I get my use out of them. So, anyways, when you compress that down as much as possible, you're trying to get rid of any air bubbles or whatnot, because you don't really want that in your packaging, especially not if it's going in a casing. This isn't, but it makes a difference. So we're going to snap it back up right there. Now, what I want to do before I get everything all secured, now you don't have to do all this, but I have found I do get more out of the machine. I'm going to lower this down, and I want to make sure that this gasket, that this press plate seats in here really well. There we go, because sometimes if I get everything secured really well first, that gasket, it's not quite lined up, and that gasket will try to roll on me. Now you see the end of this screw right here. I didn't show you the bottom of that plate, but there's a little button on the bottom there, and that's actually an air release valve. So that's allowing it to vent a lot of the air. You can hear a little bit of it coming out. You probably can't hear it on the video. And now that I've got it set, I'm going to come around here and I'm going to do the rest of what I need to do to secure this, just to make sure I don't run into troubles. But before I do all that, these are the Chubb bags, the stuffer bags. I would flip them over and show you. I've got them labeled, and I'm not going to put the customer's name out there on a public video. So, but I've got it labeled what it is, what date, and all that fun stuff. And then once they're fully packaged, we go twist those, make sure we get everything, a little bit of air out of them. We can. It's a nice tight package. It comes over here, this little taper machine. It's got this little double-sided tape. I just clip it right down through there and it'll seal it up. Some folks use metal rings. I'm not fond of them myself. Some people use zip ties or whatnot. This is the fastest, easiest way. This is actually how they do it commercially, typically. So we're going to go with that. I don't know how well this will work with the stuffer rocking things, but we're going to try to prop the phone here real quick and just show. I'm going to slide this bad boy over here. You can get that. I'm sort of going to press a little bit of air out of this Chubb tube and come up to about where I mark. I know where about a pound is. And then I just want to go ahead and crank the machine and let it fill, but I don't want to overfill it. I'm going to go right where about a pound is, pull it out, twist it tight. Now I've got that. I'm going to come over here. We're going to move this phone again, see what we can do. See if I can show this taper again. I'm going to try to press this against my body. Sorry about the weirdness of the... Okay, that's probably not going to work quite so well, but we're going to try it. And... oh, no. Here we go. Ah. Okay, well that didn't work as well as I wanted to show the actual taping part. But as you can see, I want to bag this pretty nice and tight and whatnot. And I don't want to overfill it to where it starts to stretch that. That should be right about a pound and maybe a pound and a tenth. I'm going to set those aside. We're going to have about 7 more of those to get done, and then we'll be all done. These will go in the freezer. We like to stack them up like this just so there's no pressure on them and nothing forces any kind of blood past that seal until it's fully frozen. And then once they're like that, they can get stacked however you want in the freezer. All right, and like I said, I made these batches a little bit bigger. I like to do that with, especially early in the season or whatnot. I'll take out of my pocket basically a little extra pork or whatnot, and we'll boost up a couple of batches just so I've got a few extra pounds. For one, there's always a little bit that gets stuck in the stuffer, and it can be packaged, but I like to make samples. It's really hard to show up and, you know, commit to buying a bunch of sausage off an animal and not being able to taste it. So we make samples. These right here are going to be, look pretty big in the video. They're about a quarter pound or whatnot, just little sausage patties, and these are just so I can throw them in the air fryer real quick and have them done fairly quick. I want to try. Now I'm just demonstrating. This is a quick little trick. What I'm going to do is par freeze these. I'm going to put this whole tray. You could lay it on parchment paper or whatever you want to do. A good clean tray, as long as it's enough grease in that sausage, should work just fine. I'm going to lay this in the freezer. Not long enough for it to start getting frostbite on top of it or anything, but we want it to get nice and firm. The reason that we do that is because if you vacuum seal these things as they are, they'll just squish into a blob. So I'm going to go ahead and freeze these. We'll take the little hockey pucks out, shake it around, you know, knock them off the tray, then right in some vacuum seal bags, and I'm going to label them, set them aside, and that way I can just thaw them out real quick when I need to, reheat a few so I can let people try what the breakfast sausage tastes like around here, and then we can make some adjustments from there, or they can decide maybe it's not for them, or more than likely they ask how much can I get. So there we go. I'll demonstrate when I clean that tray off, hopefully, if I remember, and kind of show you what that looks like. Okay, don't mind the construction noises, just showing we're ready to go. We are loaded up with our Polish sausage. We've got our smaller horn on here, and we're about to load up this hog casing. Just kind of, this is just one of them. Those ones we soaked earlier. And from here, it's a delicate operation, but basically I've just got to work them carefully on here. Don't tear them while I do it. So we're going to load that up. I'm going to show you my way of linking the sausage. There's a couple different ways. Some guys will run out a full casing at a time. You got to leave it a little bit loose, and then they will twist everything. Some guys will leave it completely whole as one run, and they'll wrap it around the rod. I like to do what I call a 4-link, and I'll hang them on some of these hooks. And we've got these stainless steel hooks that we use, and that's the way I like to do it. We're going to hang them that way and let them hang in the cooler overnight. They will get smoked tomorrow. I will try to at least show you some of that after I get this casing loaded up, and we'll go from there. Almost need a GoPro or something for this part, but as you can see, I've got your casing loaded up. It's never really quite perfect. You can kind of see there's the whole end right there. We want to avoid any air in it. So what I've done is I've already run the meat all the way out to the end of the tube right here. So my first one that comes out, I'm going to kind of pinch it and twist a little bit. And I'm going to kind of have to go by feel and let it fill that casing. Not so much to burst, but I want it to be tight. So if I was running it all out as one casing, I want a little bit of slack because I'm going to end up twisting those links, and that extra pressure will cause those casings to pop. So it is kind of a delicate art. You have to go by feel. It's part of why I like a hand crank stuffer. I've got a lot more control of it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run out a link, and I'll show you once I have that out. Okay, I like to go for a good 6 to 8 inches usually per link. That's just personal preference. As you see, some air does escape. Now, a lot of times people have what they call a sausage pricker. Kind of looks like those little things that will hold your corn cob. A lot of guys will just go through and prick a bunch all over the sausage. I don't like to over prick it because you can lose some fats as it cooks that way. But when you see that little bit of air bubble, just take the tip of your knife and just the slightest little prick, just enough to let the air out. That's all you got to do. And that meat, there we go, as that cooks, that meat will seal it up. So now I'm trying to get all that air out. I'm going to go ahead and I like to twist and link as I go. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of twists. Now I'm going overhand that time. So the next link that I run out, it will already be locked right here. The next link that I run out, I'm going to try to go for about the same amount of length, same volume of sausage. Then I'm going to twist it the opposite way. Now if I twist them all the same way, they'll just unravel the one in front of them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, here we are. Might have gone a little bit longer on that one. Right? And then we're just going to twist it the opposite way. It's hard for me to do this while holding the phone and kind of show you, but basic idea. Now we're going to run 4 of these out, and on that last one, we're going to make sure we link it. We're going to twist it real tight, pull it out a little bit, and we're going to cut it with our sharp knife. Now I have 4 individual links together. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I have my 4 links here. Dun dun dun. All right, so this is really complicated. It confuses people so much. Take your 2 end links and cross them. Just do a twist. That'll kind of lock them together. Boom. So I'm going to take my hook that I've got. I prefer to use an arrow end on the sausage if possible. It gives me a little bit more play, but it doesn't matter. And then boom, just like that. Make sure that the loose ends are hanging on opposite sides, and you kind of shake them, you know, adjust it so there's minimal sausage with each other. That way it's got no light spots, cooks evenly, gets good smoke and air to the majority of the link. It's going to hang like this in the cooler overnight, which is going to help dry those casings out a little bit, let all that cure set, let everything, all the ingredients and spices sort of blend, and it smokes up a little nicer when it's actually dried overnight like that. So then we'll hang this from the rack in the smoker, and to me it just works out the best on a small scale. If you've got a vertical smoker at all, this is the way to go. I think it's better than laying them out on racks, and that's just my way of doing it. So we're going to get about, I don't know, probably another 5-6 little bundles like this done out of this batch. We'll get them hung in the cooler, and they'll go in the smoker tomorrow. Hey, here we are in the noisy cooler. As you can see, I've got our smoked sausage, well, soon-to-be smoked sausage, that we just finished stuffing, hanging up in here. I could hang it a lot tighter. Typically, I would hang a label on these, just so I know exactly what it is and whose it is, and that label will stay on there the entire time it's in the smoker, all the way through processing. But we've only got 1 animal in the house at the moment. It's the first one we're doing any sausage with. So there's no need for me to label it, because I know there's only 1 guy. I've got some more scheduled to come in though, so that's great. As I said, there's always about 1 pound that's still stuck in that stuffer. That's just part of it. It's the nature of the beast. I don't like waste, like I said. So we took that. We got some of this little wax paper here. We made a couple little patties out of it. So we're going to take that. We're going to let it sit here with these overnight. They're going in the smoker on the rack as well. And those, well, they end up being samples or lunch one day, rather than throw them away, which is typically what happens, I think, most people, or they just mix it in another batch of sausage. I always have a need for samples. So, and they make a good sandwich. It's just cured smoked sausage. It's not the casing. Anyways, we're gonna let these guys hang overnight. We'll hang them in that smoker tomorrow, and hey, we'll have this order completed once those come out of the smoker. They chill down, get vacuum sealed. I'll be calling them and say, hey, look, your orders are ready to pick up. All right, those patties we threw in the freezer earlier have firmed up. They're not fully frozen, but they're firm to the touch. It's where we want them. So we got us a big old spatula right here. I need to use 2 hands to hold the tray to do this, but let me see. I'm going to scoot it over here next to the stuffer frame, see if I can do it on video. Yep, see, just like that. I'm going to do that to every one of those. Break them up. Some of them come loose right there like that. Boom. Nice little patty, nice and firm. It'll vacuum seal just fine. I'm going to hurry up and break all these free, get them vacuum sealed before they thaw out, and then we'll be back to where we were. And like I said, don't let them sit long enough to start getting frost on them. They're starting to freeze burn then, just enough to kind of firm up. And this works really well with any kind of patties. They work well with actually anything that's a little bit soft that you're trying to package up. Fresh link sausage especially, if it's not smoked, they can kind of squish and deform. Just partially freeze it. Lay it out in the shape that you want it. Freeze it up, then vacuum seal it. Here we are again the next morning, day 2. We got those sausage hung. This is, please don't mind the dirtiness and whatnot, this is literally built inside of a pole barn. As you can see, my customers use it for their agricultural type stuff. I snagged this stainless steel commercial refrigerator a few years back. We ripped all the plastic out of it. A guy I got it from was actually converting it into a smoker. And I got this one in the deal too, this electric smoker. This one unfortunately had a fire in it last year. And I need to replace this door or clean this out and change out to more fire-safe insulation. As you can see, that cost me a little money. We had that set up for electric smoking. We put a lot of meat through it, but this has been the old standby. This was gas-powered. The guy who was working on it originally had it set up with an oven burner, and that was just too flaky. I ended up, it's still there, it's just out of the way. We replaced it with this. See, it's rusted here because we used it quite a bit last year, and it's sort of sad. But this is a burner you would put under like a crawfish boiler or a turkey cooker. It's propane, it's fairly easy to control. I like it.
We'll show the smoke generation here in a minute. We've got one of these smoker tubes that I'm going to talk a little bit more about. And I've got the sausage hung. So it's hung up here. As we talked about, we've got, let me flip that video over here. We've got those patties as well. I've got my temperature controller. As you can see, there's a probe hanging back there that's just reading the ambient temperature. There's also one in the sausage in the middle, which I know is going to be a cooler spot. We want this all to get to a safe temp. I'm going to be going for about 160 internal. You can see this smoked up here, all this mess. This is, we used this pretty damn hard last year, so there's a lot of buildup. We've done some cleaning on this thing here, and there's been a small fire in here as well at one point, but everything seems to work out pretty good. The hope is by next year I'll have upgraded to a like a 3x3 or 4x4 smokehouse. I could go big, but it costs a lot more on fuel, and there's only so much I want to package in a day. But anyway, this is the start of it. Once we get it fired up, I'm going to show you everything. Let me close that back up. Like I said, this Inkbird controller, it's got 4 different zones. We're using 2 today. Number 1 is going to be that internal at 77 degrees air temperature right now. That sausage should come up to 41 degrees. I need to get the smoker going. When I pulled it out, the internal temp read 37 degrees. So it's been hanging in that cooler, keep it nice and cold and food safe. We're going to let this smoke roll for approximately, about 2 hours. And at a lower temp, then bring it up and cook it. We're going to go for 160 internal. I usually go a little higher, about 162. Make sure those casings have a good snap to them, and make sure everything's food safe. So we'll update you on the next one. Talk about too, for the smoke generation, I actually use pellets, like for a pellet grill, but I've got one of these smoker tubes. This is a pretty heavy duty one. I don't think Amazon actually sells this exact brand anymore. I looked the other day. There's something very comparable, and I can post that in the link. If there's anything y'all are looking for that has to do with this processing, let me know. Get you a link, and at least it'll get me some kickback for putting this content out. But these things are awesome. You fill them up with chips. I'm going to put it directly over the burner and get that going, and get that fly off there. It'll generate smoke for probably a good 2 hours in here, and it's very consistent. So every time I do it, it's going to be about the same results. I really do like that, especially since I'm making food for other people. I don't want to guess that it's going to be, a good result. So I'm going to fill this thing up. We'll come right back. Okay, I've got my pellet tube loaded here. Typically what I use is, around here it's available. It's a B&B brand championship blend, which I think is pecan, cherry, and post oak. It's a pretty good little mix. I like it. So what I do is I'll set it down here. As we see, let me spill some chips out. I've got that burner down there. I'm going to set this directly over the burner. I've got this old sort of aluminum turkey roaster. I need to grab a new one. I can see everything's kind of sits here and gets a little bit rusty. But we're going to come down here and let's see, where is my, I usually have one of the big lighters, but we're going to go ahead and light this up. And as you can see, this burner down here, let me get the gas turned on. This old burner right here is a little bit clogged on one side. I've got a replacement for it, but I don't want to. About 3/4 burnt. We're going to adjust that down. What I want to do is smoke it a little bit high, run that flame a little bit high for a bit, just because I'm going to ignite those pellets. And once I see that smoke start rolling, we're going to kill this flame completely. That temp is going to come up to probably about 120. And we're going to leave it there between 120 140 for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and let all that smoke roll through. Let that sausage at a lower temperature sit in that smoke and just absorb. After its internal temp reaches about 120, it really won't absorb much more smoke flavor as it is. So this is a pretty good calculated amount that I've done. I've tried it over and over again, and it always works out. So once those pellets ignite and they get going, we'll kill that flame. We'll let them soak in that smoke. Then we're going to come back, fire up. We're going to control that box temp with, well, we're going to be monitoring it with this, like I said, it's this Inkbird controller right here. Now you can see there's plenty of room in the smoker, so I can hang multiple racks. Sometimes I'll have up to 75 pounds of sausage in here at a time. And this allows me different zones, so I can use multiple temperature probes to monitor different parts of the box, make sure I know everything comes up to a good food safe temp. So yeah, right now, look, we're at about 100. I've closed that door and I can push it a little tighter. We're a little over 100 degrees in the internal temperature. and that sausage internal temp is climbing. Like I said, once we reach about 120 degrees internal temp on that zone 2, we're just we could waste all the smoke we want. It's not going to taste any better. It's going to just color the outside. So at that point, we pretty much cook them. We finish them out and get it going from there. So I will update here a little bit later once we see what the sausage looks like as we change shit up. That box temp is a little over 156 now, but that smoke is rolling. You guys probably can kind of see that in the video. We're going to come over here. I'm going to kill the gas. Open it up and make sure we are good. We are out. Okay, cool. Now this door's a little bit warped. We're going to push this propane tank up here against it. We're just going to let that sit and soak in that smoke. So that chip tube's going to burn pretty good. Once I see that smoke stop coming out of that box, I know it's going to be time to heat it up and cook it. Okay, so at about 2 hours, we're here still smoking a pretty good amount, and we're up to just under 130 on the internal temperature and about 99 degrees for that internal sausage temp. I could let this go for a little while longer, actually. You typically want to make sure that a smoked product gets over 145 degrees, I believe it's a cutoff, within about 4 hours. We're well within that safe zone, but we're going to open this thing up. We're going to take a look at it. As long as that sausage has got some color on it, the rest of the color comes with the cook. And I think we're going to go ahead and get it finished out. See if we can get this thing cooled down and maybe even packaged today. So it should have had plenty of look. And there's not, it's not a crowded smoker, so it's had plenty of opportunity to absorb it. Let me do a little slide. We're going to open this up and have a look. Ooh, look at this smoke rolling out. Let's let it clear. And oh yeah, we're definitely getting some good color here. Hard to tell in the video, but for sure. We're going to zip down here and have a look. It's probably going to burn me. I'm going to flip this thing up a little bit. Yep, we see we've mostly burnt that out. It's just down to some coals. We'll get a good plume of smoke once we get that that flame going again. I've actually got my long lighter. This once we get this actual flame going. Yeah. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to adjust it down, not up, to just a low smoke right there, and come down to where it just maintains it. And I'm going to close this box up, and I'm going to adjust from there. And I'm looking for a neighborhood about 180, 190, no more than maybe 220, unless I run into a real problem. If I got a heavily crowded box, I may have to jack the temperature up a little bit, but I'm just basically a small oven now to bring that sausage up to a safe temperature. So we're going to close it back up. We're going to monitor it, and we'll see what how long it takes. Right, we hit our 160 internal. As you can see, I went ahead and I've already killed the gas. I've been letting it cool down just a little bit here. It's starting to come down. We had about 200, 209, I think, at the most in the box. And we're down to about 154 internal now as it starts to cool. So we're going to have a quick peek and look. Oh, man, look at the color on that. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Perfect casings. We're going to let that cool for just a little bit. We're coming here with tongs. We're going to pull that out. We're going to get this in the cooler and get it cooled down. We just got to go through with a knife, cut those little links apart, and boom, it's perfect. So we'll get those all vacuum sealed up for the customer and have some samples as well. All right, cooled down just a little bit. Slice some up to do some samples. And I mean, yeah, look at that. Definitely moist, firm, well done. That's how you want sausage. All right, folks. Sorry about that delay there. Yeah, so that was a longer video than I had actually kind of anticipated too. Proud of myself here on time, so I'm not going to take up too much longer. But if you have any questions on any of that, let me know. I posted the individual videos as well. You'll have to go to my YouTube here to find them for Renegade Butcher. And I've got the breakdown video posted individually, and then the sausage as a separate video. So it should be a little bit more kind of spelled out there and easier for you to watch. I posted most of it up on Telegram. I posted all the breakdown side on Telegram. and some people had issues with it loading the video. Hopefully it's on their end, it's not on Telegram. Everything looks good for me, and several people said they did have success watching the video, so there is that. I don't know, technology is a thing. So I posted it up here, figure it goes out to all the different platforms, and I actually had the uploaded copies on YouTube. I'm sorry for podcast listeners, you lose a lot on the video side of things. If you're just listening to the audio, it's something you kind of want to watch. I wish I could do more knife work. I will try to get some more of that uploaded and updated and, filmed in actual action, should I say, versus me showing the before and the afters. So when I have some help here to kind of get that going. So I appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm not going to keep you long. I'm going to jump over to Lightning for Liberty. Follow us there if you're looking at talk about crypto, and we will catch you all later. Thank you.